Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, with a little more than a week to go, what is the General Assembly accomplishing this session? Is the Purple Line too darn expensive to build? And is Metro so dangerous that it should be shut down for good? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the former Majority Leader of the Maryland House of Delegates, John Herson, Republican activist Jerry Cave, former Executive Director of the Maryland Democratic Party and business consultant Rich Parsons, and education activist Cynthia Rubenstein. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. With less than 11 days left before the legislature adjourns, Democrats in the General Assembly have fast-tracked at least a dozen bills they intend to give to Governor Hogan on April 1st. That'll start the clock on the week he has to sign or veto them. The General Assembly agreed Thursday to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to spark a renaissance in Baltimore. Those bills included millions of dollars in grants for Baltimore area neighborhood groups to redevelop communities, a ramped-up program to demolish vacant housing, money to create after-school and summer programs, and then the Senate Republicans tried to unsuccessfully make all of this tied to funding programs subject to the governor's annual review. The bills now are before Governor Hogan, forcing the Republican governor to decide by next week whether to veto policies he backs because they are attached to spending mandates he does not support. The timeline gives the Democratic-controlled General Assembly the ability to override any of the governor's vetoes immediately, ending the annual 90-day session the way it started, with a show of political force. John, the major divide between the governor and the General Assembly is over mandatory spending requirements. But aren't these the same type of requirements that caused fiscal problems in the past and what the voters rejected when they elected Governor Hogan?
Well, let me first talk about your question, which is about the electorate and what they rejected when they elected Larry Hogan.
There's two parts to the question.
Yeah, there's two parts to the question.
Okay.
So I want to talk first about the rejection of that. I agree with you that part of what happened when Larry Hogan got elected was that voters were upset about taxes, frankly. And I think that was generated by the fact that there were a lot of programs that were put in place that generated the need for taxes. So to that extent, I think the voters did speak about rejecting the taxes. I don't think voters actually rejected some of this mandatory spending. I mean, there's a lot of mandatory spending in the state budget. You've got Medicaid spending, which you have to spend. There's education spending that you have to spend. These are all mandated programs. And so the fact that you're adding to mandated spending is not the issue. The question is, how do you pay for it? And I do think that's an issue for the Maryland voters.
Except in this instance, and I'm going to go to Jerry on this,
Yeah.
a lot of these programs and a lot of this money is going to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Jerry, aren't the voters of this state tired of paying for Baltimore's problems?
What they're tired of is paying that causes Baltimore problems. American cities are experiencing revival all over the country. Even in New Orleans, which has the worst housing and the highest taxes in the South, everybody's going to the cities except in Baltimore. And spending some more money on libraries and all this stuff they're talking about isn't the problem. It's a distraction from the problem. The problem is Democrats in Baltimore are killing other Democrats in Baltimore, and it's too dangerous for people to move into the city.
Well, but let's
Wait a minute.
focus on
That
that.
is the issue.
No,
and
let's
if it
focus on-
wasn't
no.
dangerous, affluent people would move in, the tax base would go up, and all of these problems would disappear right
wait a minute.
away.
You're,
I don't
you're,
agree
you're,
with
you're,
the
you're
premise,
expanding the
Jerry.
scope of the question. The scope of the question
I'm not
is
expanding
about
the scope.
is about
You're
the
over
general
here in the weeds
is
about
the
something
general
that's not the problem.
It's about the General Assembly and the money that's being allocated. I'll let you have this, and then I got to go on to Rich.
Well, no, I would just disagree with the premise that you take, Jerry. I think actually Baltimore is having a renaissance of people, young people moving in there. I think there's a lot more activity of
At a
people moving in there.
snail's pace compared to
All right.
other
I don't
American
think it's
cities.
that. I don't think
Wait-
it's
wait a
really
minute.
that bad. So
We're gonna,
and
we got
the bottom
we got
line-
12 pieces of legislation that I want to go through.
All right, go ahead.
So we can talk about the root causes on another show.
All right.
Rich, another controversial proposal that is being up is the new scoring system for funding transportation projects, which the governor vetoed this afternoon because it reduces his ability to prioritize limited resources.
Right, and Casey, you're not going to find a bigger proponent of scoring transportation projects based on their effectiveness and funding them accordingly than me. But Senate Bill 908, which is the legislation that the General Assembly passed, was a ridiculous bill that was poorly drafted, poorly conceived, and poorly executed. I think the governor is actually right to veto this legislation. There were some amendments made on the Senate side that ended up going through that made it a little bit better. But if you're going to pass a bill that scores transportation projects on effectiveness, and the bill hardly even mentions the word traffic congestion, what are you doing? And the problem is they tried to legislate the standards. That's now going to be up to the department, so there's a little bit more flexibility. But I think still this sets a precedent of legislating issues that traditionally the Department of Transportation under Republican administrations and Democratic administrations has had the professionals in their department handle a little bit removed from politics. And I think this bill goes in the wrong direction. If I were the governor, I'd veto it too.
All right, John, real quick, isn't this just about political muscle?
I think so. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, transportation projects are big deals for local jurisdictions.
Right.
So people want to have some control over it. They don't want to just give control to the governor.
But this goes
or
back.
that
This goes
governor.
back to the governor vetoing funds for Baltimore earlier in the session.
Yeah, a lot of
I mean,
this is
just-
payback,
this is
Casey.
payback,
Some
right?
of this is political payback for the governor's decision on the Red Line. But the truth is, the Red Line in Baltimore never hit the cost-effectiveness
Right.
numbers that the Purple Line hit, and wasn't going to get funded by the feds anyway.
Well, we're going to get
So-
we'll get to the Purple Line later.
there's a whole
I gotta-
process.
I got to
Yeah.
keep moving.
Yeah.
Cynthia, one surprising piece of legislation that did pass was a bill that would permit the state to pay for scholarships at private schools. What do you think of this?
Well, I'm a little surprised that it passed, but it would not have passed if two delegates from the city of Baltimore had not stepped forward to support it, and then gained support also from Mike Miller. And the concern, I think, from the legislators in Baltimore is that they are grasping at straws to find any way to help young black men not go down the path of perdition. And so it's a $5 million fund. An advisory board will be set up to figure out the criteria for the scholarships. But next year, I think the teachers union will be back to take it out.
For what
If
it's
you wanna
worth, this
help
has
young-
been
Hold on.
this has been around for years.
It's been around a long time.
It has been around for 20 years. This idea
Back
of
since
doing
I
these
was
scholarships.
running the Democratic
Correct.
Party.
If you want to help,
So,
been around a
if
long
you're
that
trying
long.
to help young black men not go down the wrong path, I assume you're not talking about young black men in Potomac and in the more disadvantaged areas. And
Then
where
it's
that
a,
would
it's
be,
a statement. It's a statement about how
I'm agreeing with you,
desperate
right.
they
But the
are in
point-
Baltimore about the state of their public school system in
sending
certain
them
parts
to
of the
Guilford
city.
and Georgetown Prep isn't the answer. You can help a lot more and solve a lot more business problems if you had more vocational schools.
Look,
we need more
This is
vocational
a
training.
This is a $5 million program.
It's a drop in the bucket.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
big
Drop in the
money.
bucket.
Montgomery County Public School System wastes that on a daily basis.
Spillage.
All right, John. There was some discussion earlier in the session about merging University of Maryland at College Park and the University of Maryland at Baltimore campus into one institution. Good or bad idea?
Again, this idea has been around for 20 years, 30 years, this idea of merging these campuses. It's probably a good idea to try to get these campuses all merged into one system. It's politically impossible. I'm just telling you. I mean, these campuses all go down there, they lobby individually. There isn't enough good to outweigh the political maneuvering. So I'm just telling you, that's what it is.
Jerry, why did the Maryland Senate reject a proposal from Governor Hogan that would have given a tax break to Maryland manufacturers?
Well, I hope you don't cut me off, Casey, but the truth of the
probably
matter
will.
is the Democrats indeed are correct. This would be a job-killing bill. The reason is this: it would work, and they don't want that to happen. And then Larry Hogan would get credit for it. He'd get reelected. He'd fix the gerrymandering,
Okay.
and some of these Democrats would lose their jobs.
All right.
And that would be an existential
Look,
threat.
I got 30 seconds, and I want to go to Rich on this. They did pass a bill to toughen the drunk driving rules after, and it was named after Montgomery County police officer Noah Leota. So is this a good bill, this interlock bill that's being passed?
I think it's a great bill. It didn't have a lot of controversy associated with it. I think there was some opposition from some of the trial lawyer types, but in general, the public, I think, strongly supports measures to crack down on drunk driving. I think this was good legislation.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Will it work if you're smoking pot?
I don't think they have a determination yet, Jerry. But why don't you go out and try and find out? When we come back from this short break, is the Purple Line too expensive to build? And is Metro so dangerous that it should be shut down? Stay tuned. And welcome back. A new report came out that said the Purple Line was going to cost $650 million more than originally budgeted for. Rich, is the Purple Line too expensive to build?
Well, no, it isn't. I think it still has economic benefits that far outweigh the investment we're going to make in this project. I'm still looking at what is exactly in this $650 million. It seems like maybe there could be another opportunity for some value engineering to maybe see if we can knock that down a bit. That is a bit of an uptick for sure. But I still think the Purple Line is worth doing. It connects the region's metro system together in ways that no other project would do. And it allows us to really focus on connecting this region, the main economic opportunities of the University of Maryland, for example.
Run the Purple Line?
Well,
Is WMATA running the Purple Line?
it's going to be the state, actually, the state of Maryland Transit
MTA.
Administration, and there's going to be a private sector contractor. They're probably going to contract that out too. So it's a public-private partnership concept that offers some potential for cost savings down the road. I'm kind of disappointed, and I have to dig a little bit deeper to see exactly what is in the $650 million. I think that's a bit more than anyone was anticipating, but I think it's still worth doing.
All right, so Jerry, do you have any reason to not build the Purple Line?
You could solve this whole problem for $1. You take the underutilized, overpriced toll on the ICC and you reduce it to $1. This will take
Except
even
it's not
more
underutilized.
Quiet. This will take even more traffic off the Beltway, which is part of what we'd like to have happen from the Purple Line, but it's too expensive, never going to get done, and the people in Maryland are never going to put that much money
It
into
is
what they
gonna
call
get done.
It's
Muncie
going to
County.
get done.
It is
So
It is
we
gonna
will
get
have a
done.
slight deficit if we reduce it to $1.
that's
And here's how we
ridiculous.
pay for it. When President Trump tells the Mexicans they got to pay for the wall, he sneaks in a couple of $100 million
To pay for the Purple Line.
for the gap
You know,
on the
Jerry-
ICC. Bada bing, $1.
There is
feel
no
like
gap.
I'm
Just for
on
the
a bad
record, there is no
reality
gap
TV
on the
show.
ICC. It is being utilized exactly as projected, and it's actually
And it
outperforming
is
estimates.
underutilized.
No, it isn't.
I've
No, it
been
isn't.
on it, and it's
No, it isn't.
underutilized.
No, it isn't.
Tell that to the people sitting
40,000
in traffic on 495.
You know, the
Rich.
wonderful thing is
Traffic's
today-
improved for the
today-
first time in our
today is-
lifetimes on
Today is
495.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
And so
Jerry's being the April Fool.
talking about President Trump,
Is April Fool's.
I hope.
Listen, you know what the biggest problem is? You got 3 Democrats on the show and 1 Republican, and they're still outnumbered.
And they're still outnumbered.
We-
All right,
we do feel compelled to tell the
Cynthia,
truth.
let's pull this back to reality. Silver Spring is going to benefit greatly from the building of the Purple Line. So the fact that there's a cost overrun, does that deter you in your support of the building of the Purple
No,
Line?
I agree with Rich that the economic development that will come with the Purple Line and the movement of workers and what it means for individual people who live in Prince George's County and work in Montgomery County. And guess what? Maybe the reverse will happen as well. So that we have more of a balance of jobs and residents between Prince George's County and Montgomery County.
Can I just
think
say
it's going
one?
to be a-
Can you all
it's gonna
connect
be a
any
good
dots?
economic
We have a
development.
maintenance problem on the metro as it exists, which is stumping the band. And now you want to build another part of it, and you don't think we're going to have more cost overruns and more maintenance problems.
This is really scary, but I agree with Jerry.
Well,
This is really
no,
scary.
see,
No, I
I
think
don't.
we
Let-
need
let-
to be
let-
really
yeah.
careful
get a
about who's
dispensation?
running the Purple Line, okay? This is a state project. It is not a Metro project, okay? Everybody acts like it's part of Metro. It's not part of Metro. And that, they haven't done this before, okay? They've had a light rail system in Baltimore, which is underutilized. So I honestly think there's more stuff that needs to be looked at here than
John,
they have already.
The Purple Line has been studied more than almost any transit project in the country, and it is one of the most cost-effective that's been scored in decades. And the reason is there's a lot of density, and as Cynthia said, there is a powerful economic incentive. We've built a transit system for this region that connects the suburban communities to downtown DC and doesn't connect the suburbs to each other. We have dominant commuting patterns that are suburb to suburb now, and the transit system we have doesn't match that. The Purple Line provides a network that
Rich,
actually
I don't,
comports to where
I
people
don't
are
disagree
going.
with that. I
And
don't
it has-
disagree with
it
that.
has
But
powerful
everybody
effects.
has to
Guys,
realize
doing.
this is a different
There's more-
system running it.
And you know what? That was why I asked Rich who was running it. Because our next
It's
topic,
going to be MTA.
the next topic is about WMATA.
Right.
Yeah.
And April Fool's Day came early this week when a remark by Metro Board Chairman Jack Evans suggested that entire sections of the Metro system may need to be shut down for periods of up to a month to address severe maintenance issues. Coming just 2 weeks after the entire rail system had been shut down for a day, the public reaction to such an offhand comment was one long moan of despair. Now, Rich, Chairman Evans and Metro General Manager Paul Wiedefeld tried to play down the incident by stating that Evans' remark was just to underscore the need for additional funding. We've heard this for years, but we've heard also about the mismanagement at this agency. It sounded like it may be time to pull the plug on either the system, the organization. Is it beyond repair?
Well, I can't even begin to fathom why Evans would say what he said. I think that was irresponsible on his part, and it's actually, from Paul Wiedefeld's own comments, it's not something Metro's actually discussed or is really considering. It's just an option that he felt like floating out there. I don't know whether he was trying to be tactical and create this impression of how dire things are. Metro has problems, and it's not just the safety issues that caused the shutdown. They've got problems with their fare collection. It's completely outdated. Other systems use online fare purchasing things that are cloud-based, that are state-of-the-art, that the millennials and the Gen Xers can use on their phones, and they're portable and transferable. Metro has none of that. They got machines breaking down. They're in a serious state of disrepair on the fare box system, on the train cars themselves. There's still no cable or Wi-Fi or cell phone or Wi-Fi service. It's not just safety that they're failing in. They're failing in key elements of user experience. And guess what? Their ridership is trending downward. The region, however, cannot afford to pull the plug on WMATA. We've got to make some investments here, and I think Wiedefeld has got his eye on the right ball here. He's focusing on some of these state of repair issues. I think he needs support, and I think Metro needs to show competence and manage this. Shutting down whole lines, that's Jack Evans speaking as a board member, and I think probably speaking off the cuff, and I'll bet he regrets saying it.
I almost feel like this was a good cop, bad cop moment.
Maybe.
Jack Evans comes in and says something incendiary, and then Wiedefeld comes in and says, "Oh, no, we're going to study this, and we're not going to shut down all these lines."
I can't disagree with you more.
I agree with Rich. We cannot afford not to have the Metro system working, and all the government officials and all the WMATA officials from 3 jurisdictions, they do this They have magical thinking.
Right.
Well,
Magical thinking. How are we
Cynthia,
going to take care of Metro if we don't manage a sustainable, regular revenue stream to support it, and they ignore it?
Well, look, I think coming 2 weeks after the system had been shut down for a day, any rider who takes the system saying, "Oh my God, they're going to shut it down for a month at a time," that just undermines
message.
any confidence that they might have.
Agreed.
John,
Agreed.
how do you fix this?
Honestly, it's about dedicated funding. You cannot have a system like this where every jurisdiction say, "Well, we'll pay this year or we won't pay next year." You can't do that.
John's
you need a
exactly
dedicated
right.
funding system.
Metro
and
is
it's not
the
there.
only major metropolitan area
Right.
transit system in the country that doesn't have a dedicated revenue
2
stream.
cents on everybody's
That's
gas
how everyone else
tax or
does it.
something.
Or
It
local
illustrates the
sales tax.
difficulty
Yeah.
of the regional
Right. Exactly.
transportation
Right.
system.
Why?
New
New
York
York's got
does
it.
it.
New York
New
does
York
it.
has
New
a
York does it.
regional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Philadelphia has.
But it's
Come
a
on,
dedicated
not that-
funding
Dedicated
system.
funding
Others have
system.
solved this problem.
That's
and
how
I think
they've done
what
it.
we've lacked is the
like
leadership
you.
to
You
actually
ready to
get
go?
it done.
Are you
That's
ready
what
for
we're
this?
missing is leadership.
Well,
right
I don't have anything to say on this topic, but I want to give you the opportunity to cut me off anyway.
Well, keep going, Jerry. I certainly will try.
Well, maybe if we had people in the private sector that were responsible to take care of this instead of government employees, because I've talked to people that work on these things, and they said that's a big part of the problem. When you work for the government, you can't get fired versus the private sector that the rest
Well,
of the
that may be part of it, Jerry.
Well, I'm
Jerry
sorry for
has a
bringing up
point.
part of it.
If you want a system that responds to users' concerns and really the riders' needs, the market provides that.
And I think
People
the
vote
most
with their feet.
important ride is going to
Yeah.
be taking these two guys to Montgomery General immediately, because if they agree with me, they must be.
And they must be out of their minds. Stay tuned for parting shots. And welcome back. Now with parting shots, John Herson.
Great. I want to shout out to the county council for looking at a $15 minimum wage for the county. This is not just one of the richest counties in the world. It is a county that leads the way on issues like this, and I think for them to be upfront and pushing that along with Washington, D.C. is enormously important. So my shout out to the county council for doing that.
Thank you, John. Jerry Cave, your parting shot.
You are only young once. However, you can be immature forever. One of the few redeeming qualities to aging is grandchildren. And people told me forever that having grandchildren is the greatest thing in the world. And when I got one, I realized they had undersold it. So for those of you who do not yet have grandchildren, stay tuned, for the best is yet to come.
Thank you, Jerry. Rich Parsons, your parting shot.
Well, Maryland voters will be going to the polls in the primary race, which is getting a lot of attention these days. Early voting starts on April 14th, and I think everyone should get out there and vote in this primary, whether you're a Democrat, Republican. Independents, unfortunately, can't vote. But one of the things that we saw this week related to the primary is a great article by Wood Ayers, a Republican pollster, who really takes a look at the numbers that we're seeing and the dominance of Donald Trump on the Republican side of the aisle and his strength here in Maryland as well. One of the key things he points out, and that we'll all have to watch as this race goes to the general election in November, is how the Republicans pivot from this very intense primary campaign. And what Mr. Ayers was pointing out is to win the general election, a Republican candidate either has to win 35% of the non-white vote in this country or 65% of the white vote. Currently, Donald Trump is pulling about 16% of the non-white vote and way less than half of the white vote that he needs. So things are not looking great for him in the general, and we'll have to see how this all plays out here in Maryland, but don't forget to go out and vote in that primary.
Thank you, Rich. Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting
Yeah,
shot.
speaking of voting, the student member of the Board of Education in Montgomery County looks like that the student member will be getting expanded voting rights on the school board and will be able to vote on collective bargaining, the capital and operating budget, as well as school boundaries. The only thing they will not be able to vote on is on any negative personnel issues in order to alleviate any conflict of interest in firing a principal or a teacher from a school. So Maryland General Assembly passed a bill in the Senate, and looks like our student board members are going to be becoming almost full board members.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. Now, my parting shot is that next week, on Thursday, April 7th, I'm going to be moderating a debate of Republican candidates running for the 6th Congressional District at the Poolesville Town Hall. One of the questioning panelists will be our own Jerry Cave, which means it should be a lively and entertaining evening. If you want more information about this event, you can get it on the Montgomery County Republican Central Committee website. For 21 This Week, I'm Casey Aiken. And remember, you can follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch us on YouTube. For 21 This Week, I'm Casey Aiken.